Are here. It is another game day preview show. Okay, so today I am here with Stingray. He's the host of the Stingray Show on Tide 100.9 FM. Obviously, this weekend, the Gators take on the Mississippi State Bulldogs at noon at Davis Wade Stadium in Starkville. Okay, Stingray, both teams are sitting at 1-2. Florida with disappointing losses to Miami and Texas A&M. And Mississippi State with an embarrassing loss last week to Toledo, 41-17, and then also that loss to Arizona State the week prior.
Right.
We are currently a 45-point favorite, and our 4.5-point favorite like when it opened, and now it's moved to about 6 points. So I want to talk to you about what's going on at Mississippi State. We talked a minute, before we came on air about this, but early into a new tenure at Mississippi State. What's your read on the mood there?
It's not good. First off, let me say thank you for having me join the show. And let me start by saying this. Mississippi State is in its third coach in 3 years. Mike Leach unfortunately passed away in December a couple of years ago. They went out and made a fast hire of Zach Arnett. That did not work well. They blew up the program with the coaching staff after 1 year because of how bad it was last year, and then they go out and hire Jeff Lebby. So as of right now, with all of the turmoil and the transfer portal and the NIL situation, a lot of the players like Xavier Thomas from Mississippi State last year, he is now at LSU. You've got Woody Marks from Mississippi State now at USC. And Will Rogers, you remember the quarterback, the gunslinger in the air raid? He is now at Washington. So all of the talent that was there under Mike Leach and Zach Arnett has exited the program, and the 43 new players that Jeff Lebby brought in are not up to caliber in the SEC, and now we are seeing the woes of 3 coaches in 3 years, and with the transfer portal and the NIL, it all piled on right now in Starkville.
Stephen, I feel like we can kind of commiserate on this because UF is also in sort of a mess right now with everything that's going on with Napier. And so, okay, a lot of times I'll ask this as a wrap-up question, but I kind of want to get your thoughts on it to start so that we can kind of commiserate on this a little bit. What do you make of Billy Napier at UF?
I thought it was going to be a great hire from the start because of all of the success he had at Louisiana, and so far it has not played out. I don't really understand why it has not worked out for Florida, but I do believe that they have a lot of talent down there. I think it's just mentally a coaching issue with them because you saw Graham Mertz really play well at times last year. Lagway, of course, is a really good player. Montrell Johnson as well. So I think it's just coaching and not necessarily a talent issue. Whereas with Mississippi State, it is simply a talent issue right now.
Yeah, X's and O's, Jimmy's and Joe's. All right, on to the game. Let's talk a little bit about Blake Shapen. How has he been so far?
He's actually been really good. I do believe he's one of the quarterbacks this season in college football that has yet to turn the ball over, which is surprising as bad as Mississippi State has played. But it's the guys around him that are not helping. The offensive line is not blocking in pass or run, so there is no passing game, there's no running game, and so he's having to scramble around and get sacked a lot because the players on the outside and the offensive line are not helping him.
Okay, so last week was a rough one against Toledo, and you lost the week before to Arizona State, but honestly, y'all were in that. game. And
Yeah.
so that game kind of gave a very different feel than Toledo did. And I don't know if Toledo is just a really strong group of 5 team and we're going to see that play out as the season goes on, or if Mississippi State is going to have a season like this. But do
Mhm.
you think that Toledo game is indicative of where this team is, or was it just an off game? Because even if you're lacking the talent to compete in the SEC, you're not lacking the talent to compete with Toledo, right?
Yeah. So I think it is basically where the program is right now, because when you look at Florida and their win over Samford a couple of weeks ago, Florida did not get pushed around like Mississippi State did against Toledo. Now, I understand that Toledo and Samford are on two different levels, but even in year number one, you are supposed to be able to dominate on both lines of scrimmage, being an SEC football team, and Toledo absolutely took it to Mississippi State on both lines of scrimmage. That cannot happen, and it did Saturday night, and that is where we are with Mississippi State.
So, you mentioned your O line struggles. Florida's lines have also
Yep.
had, massive issues so far this year. Our defensive line has not been good at all. We were hoping to see a bigger push up the middle this season than last season. It hasn't come to fruition yet. Do you think that this is a game where Mississippi State can maybe get back on the right track? They know they're playing a defensive line that's not that good.
Yes, it's possible, but it all depends on how that offensive line for Mississippi State shows up. Because on Saturday night, the very first drive of the game, there was a holding call and a big sack that set the tone for Toledo for the rest of the game, and Mississippi State never responded. They never adjusted, and it was a nightmare. So, yes, if Mississippi State's offensive line can come out and play like it did against Arizona State in the second half, then yes, then Mississippi State has a dog's fight of winning the game. If they come out and they play the way that they did last week, they may be sitting at a 1-win team this season.
So, some of the things that you're talking about for Mississippi State just feel like I could just repeat them back to you about Florida
Yeah.
because there's some similar issues. Talk to me
Yes.
a little bit about Mississippi State's D line. Florida's offensive line hasn't been great. They've probably been worse than Florida's defensive line. So, what does your front four look like, and how do you think they could stack up against Florida's offensive line?
They're slow. Our defensive line, Mississippi State's defensive line, is slow. They do not know how to tackle. They're putrid, and that's all I can say about it. I mean, because they let one guy in Arizona State, the running back, run for over 250 yards in that game. If you allow one player over 250 yards rushing, your defense is not worth anything. So Mississippi State has major growing pains on the defensive side of the ball.
So let's say that you are the defensive coach at Mississippi State. How would you prepare for Graham Mertz and DJ Lagway? They're both going to play, right? So
Yeah.
how do you prep for two guys?
That's a good question. I think you have to stack the box against Lagway to prevent him from running, and I think that you cannot keep your cornerbacks on islands when you have Graham Mertz in the game, because both of them can hurt you in different ways. So that's if I were the defensive coach, I would say, all right, Lagway's in, stack the box, and let him prove that he can beat you with the wide receivers. And when Mertz is in, go, all right, we're going to double and play with two safeties high, and I'm going to force you to run the ball and go to other checkdowns to try and beat us.
Where do you think Mississippi State is going to try to exploit UF the most?
Probably with a running game and the quick passing game, because I will tell you this, being at the game on Saturday, when Mississippi State went up tempo on Toledo, they were able to move the ball at will. when they were standing there huddling and taking time, that's where the communication got off a little bit and they stalled. But once again, at the end of the game and right before the half, when it was 2 minute, let's hurry up, let's go, Mississippi State was clicking on all cylinders. That is one thing I think you will see Jeff Levy try to do this week in order to get the offense back up to speed, because we saw the offense come alive a little bit in the second half against Arizona State, and they need to go back to doing that if they're going to beat the Florida Gators on Saturday.
What about UF do you think worries you the most?
I would say Mississippi State's defense not being able to stop Florida at all, because Mississippi State's defense is slow, they can't tackle, and they get out of position a really big, and it's just it. Let me just say this. Mississippi State is not good on defense. They are really bad on the defensive line, and they're really bad in the secondary as well. They are very slow. They are not an SEC defense at all, and that really scares me, not only from Florida, but moving forward, because this defensive line is awful.
So it sounds like you're not particularly positive on your team right now, and
No,
we know how that
no.
feels over here in Gator Nation as well. But do you have a pick yet in this one?
I'm going to go with Mississippi State, and I tell you why. Because Florida in history does not play well in Starkville. It is always a sloppy game, it is always turnover fest. And if you will remember a couple of years ago, I would say probably 20 years ago now, Mississippi State was in a very similar situation when they lost to FCS Maine. And then 2 weeks later, after the bye week, Ron Zook and a ranked Florida team came into Starkville, and Mississippi State upset the Florida Gators. So I'm going to take Mississippi State, but I'm not very confident on that pick.
Well, I got to tell you, my husband was a member of that team when that happened, and Ron Zook lost his job on the
Yes,
plane ride home from that. So no, Florida does not have great Starkville
right,
memories, and it has done in at least one coach, and it will be TBD on whether or not it does in another. Before
right.
I let you go, a couple things. Tell me a couple of names, players, maybe young guys that we should really keep our eye on.
There is a wide receiver from Mississippi State, Coleman, and then, of course, obviously Blake Shapen. Those two are really, really good. And on the defensive side of the ball, I've got nobody.
All right, we're going to be watching
I'm
the cheerleaders.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just that defense is awful. They're slow. They cannot tackle, and they get beat out of position way too much. And that is a major, major weakness for Mississippi State.
I'm just a little concerned over here that you've spent this entire interview telling us how bad Mississippi State is, but then you
Yeah,
picked them, because I don't really know what that says about my Gators, but nothing good, that is for sure.
right.
Well, thank you for coming on. Tell
Yes.
everybody where they can find your work and follow you on social media.
I am at Stephen Ray 30 on Twitter, X, whichever one you want to call it, and then Stephen Stingray Ray on Facebook. And my show is the Stingray Show. We have a Facebook page there on Facebook, and we are an SEC show. So we talk all things SEC, including the Florida Gators. So check us out on YouTube as well. And it is meteorologist Stephen Ray. And we do talk a lot of Gators, and especially with the hot seat talk, ramping up for Billy Napier.
Well, and congratulations to you, because you just recently became a Mississippi State grad with the
Thank
degree
you.
in meteorology.
Yes.
That is so cool. I want to
Yes.
be a hurricane tracker when I grow up. So
Yes.
I think that's pretty darn cool. Stephen, thanks for having us
Yeah.
on or coming on with us tonight. We appreciate
Right.
it. This was a lot of fun, and I'll have to message you during the game as we
Yeah.
lament how bad both of our teams are. But you have a good night. I'll talk
You
to you
too. And can I say one last thing?
soon.
My sleeper pick for the head coach at
Oh,
Florida
yes.
next up is going to be right down the road. in Orlando right now. I'm going to go, if I'm the AD, I'm calling Gus Malzahn. Come on back to the SEC.
Oof, well, we shall see if that happens.
Yes.
Appreciate your time, Steven Stingray.
Thank you.
This was fun.
Yes. Thank you.
All right, guys, before we talk more about this game, I want to give BetUS some love. You can go to BetUS and bet on the game right now. BetUS has upped the game. Now you get 150% deposit when you use the code YouTube150. That's up to $2,000. Your second and third deposits are still that 125 deposit bonus. And listen, we are a 6-point favorite right now. So if you like the Gators, go lay a little bread on it. Appreciate BetUS for their support and go check them out. All right, guys, we're going to talk a little bit about this game. We're going to lead with the fact that Trey Wilson is out. I have been told that it is a knee injury, and that's going to hurt. I want to talk about Trey Wilson and where he's been involved or not involved in this game in a little bit, but that's kind of a breaking news thing that Trey Wilson is out for the Mississippi State game. So absolutely could be a factor here. Okay, so I want to talk about a little bit where we are as a program with Coach Napier and his future here. I have reiterated this in every piece that I have done about Coach Napier the last couple of weeks. I think that he is a really good guy. I take no pleasure in saying that I think his time at UF is coming to a close, and I just don't think that he has been good enough to be retained as the head coach at Florida. I was looking through some quick stats before I came on here and found some really interesting things. Okay, so I'm going to go over with you a couple of the reasons why I think this tenure has to be wrapped up here pretty soon. 12 wins. That's the total number of wins Napier's had in 3 seasons as the head coach of the Florida Gators. It's not enough. Furthermore, his record against rivals and his record at home, which those are benchmarks that, in my opinion, get you fired well before your overall record does. And those numbers are abysmal. 27 points. That is the combined number of points that Miami and Texas A&M defeated the Gators by. So Miami won 41-17 and A&M won 33-20. I don't think that it's even that the Gators lost these 2 games. Obviously, they're 2 games you want. If you look at your overall schedule, they are 2 of the, I would say, easier half of the schedule potentially. But it's not even that they lost to these teams. Right now, Miami is hot, right? We are looking at them very high up in the polls, currently one of the best teams in the country. I don't know that I think they'll be challenged, so I don't know that they'll stay that way, but that's where they are right now. And A&M has a slightly higher talent profile than UF. So if you're looking at that, it's understandable that Texas A&M would beat Florida. But I think that it's just damning that Florida was never even competitive with either of these 2 teams. The outcome of both of these games were never in doubt. Lots of you sat in those stands with me. There was never a single moment that it felt like UF was in those games. And that is unacceptable. One of you guys commented, please discuss the quarterback situation, honey. Don't worry, I will get there. 106th. That is where Florida's total defense ranks in FBS. So there are more than 130 FBS teams, but for comparison's sake, Mississippi State is ranked 94th. We're sitting at 106. Florida is dead last in the SEC in total defense. Mississippi State's 1 spot ahead of us at 15. We are in year 3 with Coach Napier. We now have the 3rd guy calling plays because Napier confirmed in his press conference that Ron Roberts is who's calling plays. Austin Armstrong called him last year. Patrick Toney called him the year before. We are not getting better on defense. In fact, the numbers tell us we're getting worse. 4. That is the total number of combined touchdowns for Florida's 2 biggest playmakers, Montrell Johnson and Trey Wilson. 3 of those 4 touchdowns came against Samford. If the Gators offense is going to be more successful, they need to get the ball in the hands of their playmakers more. And obviously this week it can't be Wilson because he's out. But we have got to figure out a way to get the ball in the hands of our top guys. I don't think we're doing that nearly enough. Okay, so let's talk about the quarterback situation a little bit. Anybody that watched my video today saw that I did an interview with Chris Leak. I think that his insight is so valuable to this situation, not only because he was a part of this Tebow and Leak dual quarterback that Urban Meyer ran successfully at Florida, but also because in his freshman year, he took over for Ingle Martin after a game where they both played some, but took over for Ingle Martin as the starter as a true freshman. There's a lot of parallels here. He was on that team when Ron Zook was fired, so he knows what a coaching transition is like. But the most interesting part of his interview to me was actually something he mentioned before the interview started, and we did touch on it a tiny bit in the interview, but that was that he spent a lot of the spring in the meeting room with both of these quarterbacks. So he not only has great insight as somebody that has been there, but he also knows a good amount about these two guys in the quarterback room and how they relate to their teammates and each other and just their grasp of the game. And he said that he believes that Graham Mertz needs to be the starter here. He thinks that DJ Lagway is an incredible talent and the future and throws a beautiful ball and is going to be an incredible quarterback for the University of Florida. But he said that Graham's grasp on the playbook, his control of the field and of this team is unmatched at this point. And, he brought up the same quote that we keep talking about. If you have two quarterbacks, you really have none. And he felt very strongly that the way that is being called as one series on, one series off for both of these guys was really detrimental to both quarterbacks, really difficult to get the offense into a groove, and really hard to be successful at all. I thought that was pretty interesting. And, I feel like Napier's kind of in this damned if he does, damned if he doesn't situation. If he starts Mertz, even if it's the right move, if Florida loses, everybody's mad. If he starts Lagway and Lagway gets hurt, everybody's mad. It's only if the guy he starts wins and plays the whole game are there going to be people that are like, okay, maybe that was the right decision. It's a hard situation to be in. That's why we pay him $7 million, but it's still not an easy situation. The other thing that Leak talked about that every former player that we have talked to on this show has said is that this team doesn't look like they have any passion or fire. And that is something that has to get turned on. And, teams take on the personality traits of their coaches. And I do believe that. But Chris brought up an interesting point where he said, at this point, senior leadership has got to bring it. You've got to hold your guys accountable. You've got to get loud in that locker room, in that practice field, and you have to demand more from your teammates. So will we see that? I don't know. We haven't seen it so far. So this is usually the point in this preview show where I give you my keys to the game. And I have 5. Some of them are keys and some of them are more questions. But my number 1 key is get better at the 2 quarterback system. Is that something we can do? The idea that you're going to rotate every series regardless of outcome, which was an exact quote from Napier after last game's press conference, doesn't seem like it's going to work. You have got to go with the guy that has the hot hand. If it's Mertz, let him ride. If Mertz struggles and you put in DJ and he is slinging it, let it ride. Quarterbacks need time to get into a rhythm. The choppy way that we played him against Texas A&M did no favors to either guy. Head coaches are paid $7 million to make the tough decision. So decide who your guy is and roll with him. Number 2 key to the game is get the ball in the hands of your playmakers. We already know Wilson's out. Can you get the ball to Montrell Johnson? Maybe bring in Baugh, have some success with him. Mizell has been good when he is on the field. Tank Hawkins has been good. Like, there are guys who you can get the ball into their hands and they can have some success. We need to see that. God knows I love walk-ons. Please, let's not be relying on them when we need a third down at the end of the fourth quarter. Please. Number 3, can we get off the field on third down? When Todd Grantham was our defensive coordinator, we all had the joke, it's third and Grantham. Florida would get close. It would be, a manageable third down, and we would literally never be able to stop that offense, right? We would never be able to get that team off the field. It didn't matter if we were good the first two downs of the series. We could never get off the field on third down, whether it was manageable or whether it was, something we saw last year, like 3rd and 17. We could never get our defense off the field. We are seeing that again this year. Florida will stop, let's say, Texas A&M. And so then it'll be 2nd and 9. We'll have done our job. 2nd down, 3rd and 8. This is a time where your defense should step up and your offense should be able to get the ball back. And somehow we give up a long play. We give up that third down. We give them a whole new series. That has got to stop. Florida's defense has got to be able to get off the field on third down. It's not 3rd and Grantham. At this point, it's 3rd and Florida. It's been the case through now our 4th defensive play caller, and something has to change. And I don't buy that we don't have enough talent to stop some of these players. It just doesn't make any sense to me. I see a comment as a former walk-on. I feel offended. Listen, my brother is a former walk-on. I love what walk-ons bring to a program. I don't understand the idea of having 4- and 5-star wide receivers sitting on the sidelines that you are not utilizing. My brain cannot wrap my head around that. Number 4, continue to play well on special teams. Florida has been very good on special teams this year. It is the area that they have improved the most in. It might be the only area at this point that Florida is improved at, but you've got to keep it up. Florida has not cost themselves anything with special teams this year, which is a huge change from Napier's first 2 years. So kudos to that. And it's got to continue. And number 5 is block out the noise. Listen, I'm being a part of the noise right here. I get it. It is frustrating for us Gator fans to watch what is happening on the field. It is frustrating to have a coach tell us like, well, we're back to the drawing boards. We're just going to go and get better this week, but we're not ever seeing that result on the field. So I am with all of you in feeling the absolute frustration. But I also know if this team wants to rally the troops, circle the wagons, and make something of this season outside of 11-1, then they're going to have to block out the noise. Chris Leak said today that he thought it was perfect timing for Florida to have an away game, that it's the perfect time to just gather your guys, get on that plane, and get out of Dodge, go to that game, get all of the local Gainesville noise out of your head, the talk show hosts, the podcasts, all of that stuff, just you and your team, and see if you can galvanize, this football team. And that's going to take senior leadership. That's going to take coaches ramping it up to a notch that we haven't seen yet out of this coaching staff. But it is possible, right? There is a path to winning this game, to winning the next, to winning a couple. Is it going to happen? I don't know. But is there a path? Yes. Absolutely. And, Matthew commented, if this team was winning, the noise would be patting the guys in the back. That's true. There's always noise in the system, right? Whether that's what Ron Zook would call it, whether it's positive noise or negative noise, there's always some sort of outside distractions. Can you be the team that doesn't check social media? Can you be the team that doesn't watch this stuff on YouTube or check Facebook or whatever and focus on just what's going on inside the building and get better? I don't know. We will see. Players love Billy Napier, right? They talk about that all the time. I believe that Billy Napier has made our players into better people. I am just not convinced that he has made them into better football players. And it is possible to really like your coach, but that person absolutely not be the right person to lead the University of Florida. Players loved Ron Zook. Players loved Will Muschamp. I mean, there are examples we can point to of guys that really never lost that locker room, but weren't good enough to get the job done. This is not a place for on-the-job training. This is not a place where you can take 5 years to rebuild, when you can look around and see programs that are getting better immediately, right? There's just, in this transfer portal world, nobody is going to allow you for 5 years to start looking better. We've got to see some improvements. This year, bowl eligibility would have been good enough for a year 4. Do we get there? Maybe, but it seems hard, to see a path at this moment. Is it there? Yes, but it's going to be difficult. Before we get to a prediction, I do want to give some love to Meldon Law. We love them so much for all of their support of this channel, and shout out to them for all they do and for Gator Athletics as well. And now they are giving some love back to you guys. Right now, you can click the link in the description of this video to enter to win tickets to the UF LSU game at the end of the year. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to buy anything. You literally just register for the ticket giveaway and you are set. I appreciate Meldon Law for their support and this giveaway that we're partnering with them on. I think this is going to be really fun. This is one of the best home games we have left. And so I hope lots and lots of you, enter and somebody from our channel gets to win. It's very exciting. Okay, so prediction time. I think that Florida wins this game 31-28. I think that Mississippi State's defense gives up a lot of points, so Florida is able to score. I also think our defense gives up a lot of points. I saw someone comment earlier that special teams could be the difference in this, and I agree. I think that if you're looking for a clear edge, it's probably Florida's special teams, which, kudos to Napier for that. We haven't been able to say that in a couple of years. But, we shall see. I am scared for us to go to Starkville because it is not a place that we historically play well unless Dan Mullen happens to be our head coach at the time. And this team has a lot that they're listening to right now. There's a lot of outside noise. So can our seniors lead this team? Can our coaches call a better scheme than we've called the last couple of games? It remains to be seen, but I do feel like Florida leaves Starkville with a victory. Come back to Gainesville. After that, got UCF. We'll see how the cards fall from there. Thank you so much to BetUS and Meldon Law for their support. And thank you guys all for hopping in tonight and hanging out. We've got some more content that's going to be coming your way later in the week. And fingers crossed, the Gators can get to 2-2 on Saturday. See you guys soon. Go Gators.